Thank you so much, Mayank, for joining us on a podcast at Doddle. Extremely grateful that you took out time and, kind of to share your insights with our global audience. We have got a set of topics on which we want your insights on, Mayank. But before we go there, would be great if you could take us to your journey so far to give a context to our audience.
Yeah, sure. Uh, Thanks for inviting me. So I joined Rebel Foods in 2020, and it's been more than half a decade. And the journey has been like nothing short of both transformative and amazing. Over the past, 5-6 years, I've had the opportunity to work and lead across multiple functions, starting with operations, where I learned the nuts and bolts of running high performance kitchens. Then moving into strategy, where we focus more on globally where to expand, which brand to bring in, how should the company structure look like. And then eventually I moved to marketing. So this transition into marketing allowed me to bring both the analytical and creative sides, both of the brand building. This journey has also taken me across geographies. It has literally been a journey. So from India to Indonesia and now in UAE, each market brought its own unique challenges. India with its scale and diversity, Indonesia with its cultural nuances, and the UAE with its dynamic and multicultural consumer base, which is there. So today I lead marketing and expansion for Rebel Foods in the UAE, where I combine all these experiences to build brands that resonate with diverse audiences and scale them commercially in what I'll say one of the world's most exciting food delivery markets, which is there. Before Revel, I completed my MBA at IIM Indore. It was a knack of participating and solving business case studies. So I participated in lot of national case competition there as well, with companies like HUL, ITC, Mahindra, and was fortunate enough to win several of them. And that explorer mindset and that that itch to do something bigger continues, and that drives me every day.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mayank, for taking us to your journey so far.
Yeah.
And we'll start with the first one. So you have managed, 10 plus food brands across geographies, and that's a complex thing. What are the biggest challenge that you see while ensuring consistent brand positioning while also tailoring to local tastes?
Yeah. So, every market bring its, own unique challenge, which is there. Uh, Overnight consumer behavior, slowly, changes. There can be like shift in the way the distribution happens. And, I have seen this personally where, people have moved towards, certain preference, which is like more intelligence to health and things like that. What, so your first question is about, what are the challenges, right? So challenges are like very basic. Firstly, when you are, moving outside India, the language itself is a challenge. Understanding the consumer is the biggest, I would say, the challenge as well as the key to unlock a successful, commercial business which can sustain over the time. In terms of consistency, what I'll say is I'll attribute it to the food tech platform that we have built. The as we call like it's now it is famously called as Cloud Kitchen, which we pioneered like almost a decade back. But what we like to believe is that it is beyond kitchens. It is like a platform which allows us to scale multiple brands, which allows us to meet the customer at the right missions, whether it is your weekday lunch in an office, whether it is your a weekend group gathering. So that flexibility where we can put in any brand, experiment and scale, that allows us to overcome these challenges. Uh, so that's how I like to put it. That so the biggest challenge I would say is that at personal, professional, both challenges are there. But the biggest is understanding the consumer itself. Like what do they want, and how can we fulfill it consistently.
Right. And how do you see customer data and analytics, kind of changing the way food brands are engaging with customers today?
So I feel like it's a bit nuanced over here.
Mm.
In terms of so data is extremely important. Data gives us a lot of insights into, like, for example, how are firstly it starts with how are the menu opens, how are people converting to a certain menu, what
Yeah.
kind of people who are coming into our menu, like what kind of nationality, why are they dropping off, what is the what is that they are searching but we don't have, or we have which they are liking. So the data plays a huge role, and this is from a customer point of view, and from a kitchen point of view, from the supply side as well. I would say the data plays a huge role. Like at today's day and date, we can predict like how many biryani is going to sell in a day. We can give that data accurately to the kitchens, and as we call it, it is managed by CDOs. as we call it, chief delight officer, who manages the entire show in the kitchen.
Mm.
So the data helps them to, now now in fact, here we have started integrating AI as well. Slowly, we are, and in fact, the CDOs themselves are upskilling themselves to, they
Mm.
do the rostering through the AI tools now. So data has played a huge role in terms of both supply side and consumer side. From supply side, we have been able to accurately forecast things. We have been able to, we have our whole full stack system which is there,
Mm.
which allows us to, right from taking the order to delivering the order, we own the entire full stack, which allows us to, be more predictable and scalable at the same time,
Mm.
as the right from the food receiving to food making, which is happening in our kitchen, to food delivering, which is happening
Mm.
both through our app as well as the aggregator apps.
Mm.
So that allows us to, control the customer experience and deliver what we are promising.
Got it. And it has already always been seen that marketing budgets, especially in the F&B segment, are always under scrutiny. What role do you see marketing automation or these performance tools can play in balancing creativity with ROI accountability?
So, see, as you rightly mentioned, marketing budgets or brand building is something that happens over long term and it compounds. As a brand, you need to speak the same, you need to have the same identity. Brand is nothing short of a person. As a person, you need to be like consistent as well as, deliver what you promise. Same is for the marketing as well.
Yeah.
Now, what happens is beyond data, there's a mix of creativity as well. Right now, if you feel certain concept can go viral, there is no guarantee that it will go viral or it will not go viral. You need to just iterate into it. Like, for example, right now in Honest Bowl, we have started the series called, Honest Bowl, where we interview a lot of people from different nationalities, try to understand, what their journey. So it's a very simple series which is there. If we would have imagined it 12 months back, it would have been difficult to pinpoint that, whether it will reach the kind of impression which it has reached. Now across TikTok and Instagram, it is having like more than 7-8 million impressions per month. So that's the kind of volumes which are there. So while automation is very important, but I feel that is more from a performance marketing point of view,
Right.
which we already use. So there, when we automate, so right now when we are putting our budgets, we put it slot wise, like lunch, dinner. We put the bids as per weekend and weekday. So on your y-axis there is weekend, weekday. On your x-axis there is different slots which are there: lunch, dinner, breakfast, evening snacks, etc. And then there are values. Like for example, a health brand. So for example, a health brand on a weekday lunch would be having a higher bid so that it is visible more. But at the same time, discounts will be controlled. Discounts would be lower because I know there is more likelihood of people converting during that slot if as long as I'm visible. But let's say during a weekend dinner, I would be lowering my bid as such because mission is not right for that, and instead putting that same money in discount because so that to convert people. So it purely depends on the brand that you have built within our portfolio. So within our portfolio,
Yes.
right now we are having brands from health, Chinese, Asian, Indian, burger, pizza, you name it, and we have like tried to
Yes.
build it over the years. So yeah, so different brands, it is completely differently. So some are, positioned like that, it is like mass brands. Some are positioned like premium brands. So the
Hmm.
brands which are premium, there it is more important that we are visible at the right times, at the right moments, but we control our promotions, etc. So data has played a huge role. But at the same time, I would say that, when you are expanding in different markets, you need to also be agile enough to work with imperfect data as well.
Yes.
You need to be like very agile in terms of that, and you need to work with that imperfect data. But at the same time, be on ground, understand situation on ground, like what people are behaving with, and take that judgment call as well. And
Hmm.
if it works, it's great. You scale up fast. If it doesn't, then you put your next hypothesis in test.
Yes.
And yeah, it becomes very important, especially when you are expanding in unknown territories where, you might not have data and everything from day one. Now in India, we have huge data. So that allows us to, launch, things like, Shravan specials during Navratri, Shravan special, Navratri specials in Lunchbox. That's how we are able to do it because now we have that kind of insight that, okay, X% of audience turns vegetarian during this time. So we need to meet them there. Yeah.
Got it. No, this is really insightful. And talking about cloud kitchens, Mayank, cloud kitchens run on very thin margins. And from your experience, what are the most critical levers that determine whether a kitchen will become profitable early or not?
It's So, here I feel is where both strategy from leadership side as well as, execution from kitchen side comes in. Yeah. So I feel, here is a lot of factors needs to come right if you need to be, profitable uh, early. So here is where, your data and everything like the leadership strategy as well as the execution comes in. So in terms of, it starts right from the location that you have selected.
Yeah.
The location selected should have that kind of potential. Then because we have decoupled, a single brand from a location, one location can run multiple brands. Then second thing comes is that, what are the kind of brands that we want to put in there. Let's say if it's a west dominated area, we definitely want to put our Asian brand, we definitely want to put our health brand. So it starts from, location selection, then it comes to, the kind of missions that you're catering, then it comes to decision like, pricing, etc., which is there. Then entire thing starts to flow in that how will you, what will be your food cost, what will be your, at kitchen level, how can you use automation so that, you're optimizing for the time of the, kitchen staff that is working over there. So it is a series of things which are there.
Hmm.
It starts right from, selection of the right location, followed by the right missions, followed by, the right CDO. Very, very important, because that CDO will be controlling a lot of things in the kitchen and optimizing for a lot of things. Then it is, supported by the, data and automation which is there. Like for example, if you know for a fact that between 3 to 6 p.m. the
Hmm.
orders will be less. So some
Yeah.
of the high energy consumption equipments you can, put on a low use mode so that the fuel is saved, the
Hmm.
energy is saved. Similarly, if you know for a fact that on a weekend the volumes will be higher during, dinner. So
Hmm.
to meet that demand, you can have a roasting where, on weekdays you optimize and weekends you have, more staff recruited, which is always the case.
Yeah.
So it is a mix of different factors,
Hmm.
and it takes a lot of things to go right to, to reach that stage of profitability.
Now, talking from the technology point of view, like technology you see now kind of is powering everything from kitchen throughput to demand forecasting. Where do you see the biggest gaps where innovation is still needed?
So I feel, a lot of software technology has come in. I would say that, but food is still a mix of both science and emotion. I would say science and art. And from a hardware point of view, whereas science has developed a lot. You can automate things like if there's a pizza, you can have a saucing and cheesing process automated. But that personalization art part, that personalized key. I want a pizza which should have more truffle oil,
Yes.
more mushroom. That, while at mass we have solved things through technology, but I feel the hardware side of it, the IoT kind of automation, the hardware automation which is there, that still needs to evolve, or maybe it is still evolved, but it needs to come down at a cost where there can be a mass utilization of that.
Right.
So that's
Right.
where I feel there's a biggest gap, and where the next innovation can happen, that as a customer, if I'm buying a meal plan, let's say in a meal plan, I want, zero gluten. So while there is software that will inform me that, this person buying Somani has ordered this order, and please don't add any gluten. Last time he placed the order and he didn't do that. And we have already cracked that formula of, having that personalization. But from a hardware point of view, I feel there is like some way to go where that support can be given so that the throughput is higher.
Yes, this
Yeah.
is a very relevant point actually. Means like there are a lot of people who are suffering from allergies and all, and they write these pointers and they have to specifically call the restaurant and tell that.
Yeah. So even right now also, we capture that. That's the beauty of having that 360-degree, platform,
Yes.
where when customer is placing that order and putting the special instruction, we have a special field in the tabs which are present in the kitchen, where that the person who is making it, he can see that tab, and then there is a router, as we call it router. Router is basically a quality check person which checks the item before going out. He also have a mechanism. He have a scanner in his hand. He'll scan it. Okay, whether the item is right or not. So we have all those checks and balances in place, and we have basically over years of experience we have cracked on how to go about it. But at the same time, I feel there is like from a hardware point of view, there can be more interventions like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
The man very nicely explained actually, and this is very useful. And when we talk about customer experience, it doesn't end at food quality. It extends to delivery and digital interactions as well. So how can tech help reduce customer complaints and elevate satisfaction?
I feel, the framework that needs to be used is like this only, like how it happens pre-sales, sales, and after sales. And here, every touch point, there's a, tech intervention that can come in. So, in pre-sales, for example, if you are ordering a certain food or certain thing, that the UI UX can be like very simple. Like, let's say, for example, my favorite wrap is paneer tikka wrap,
Yeah.
and I always order it without onion, without things like that. So, firstly, it's a very basic thing, but still a lot of places doesn't have it. That you remember that this is my preference whenever I'm ordering this thing. So there's no chance of mistake. So I'm trying to remove the friction between customer ordering and what kitchen is receiving. That
Yes.
every time I don't need to put that, please remove onion from my
Right.
wrap,
Huh.
please make it extra crispy and things like that.
Hmm.
As a customer, as a restaurant, as a
Hmm.
food tech platform, we can remember that this is the kind of order that this customer places every time. Then there are like slight factors, like which is like giving a personalized touch, that for the each order, maybe when the order is placed, which we have again scaled across our kitchen locations, where even every order there's a personalized kitchen note going from the kitchen to you, that hey, I prepared your order, please have it with love and everything. So I feel during the sales as well, there can be a lot of automation. Like for example, it's your birthday today. There can be an automated call going to you, wishing you a happy birthday. Hope you have enjoyed the thing. I think some of the platforms have already begun working on it, cracked it as well. But a lot more can be done in terms of making you feel special during the sales itself. And then after sales, of course, after sales, tech can play a huge role. It can be like very seamless, that, if you have had any, problems with your order or something like that, there can be, we have installed, a proper AI agent, etc. So we have a mix of both the CD agent as well as the AI agent. And, depending on the escalation, we use both in terms of resolving the customer problem. But again, tech plays a huge role over here. Like it can, at a first level, bucketize what kind of problem it is, whether, there is something missing, so there's something wrong. Then accordingly, the next step can be taken. So this can be, the whole flow is automated. And I feel that tech plays a huge role. It helps in involving the customer experience like 3x, because it becomes like very seamless. If you had a great experience, you will come back, even if just in case, because 1 out of 100 cases it could happen, because
Hmm.
that there has been something which is not as per what you have thought. Then that's where technology comes into play, that it can be immediately resolved. And uh, yeah, I feel it can become a big thing, as it can become big to a point that it can become moat for a company, that how fast or how reliable your platform is, your restaurant is, that whenever I order from here, I know that for a fact that it will be a good experience either ways.
Again, we'll come back to the first pointer that we had, that since the company in which you're working in is very popular in Middle East and Southeast Asia, so so what's the hardest part of taking a brand playbook, say from India to Southeast Asia or a Middle East?
So I'll try to sum it up in both, like the problem as well as the solution to it.
Yeah.
Say, let's say, let me put it in a proper manner. So I think firstly, agility is very important. What happens is, like, a lot of times as a human, as companies, there is a tendency that whatever has worked here will work there. Like, you tend to sail in the known territory.
Yes.
But that's where leadership comes in, and that's where the DNA comes in. The rebel DNA has always been like, one of our values is challenge the status quo, which says that don't accept anything as given and just challenge it. And that's how I have also approached it, like throughout this journey, where don't go with an assumption. Always see like what is happening in the market and then take the calls. So that platform is already there. The platform of tech and kitchen is already there. But that gives you the foundation where you can be, where you are assured that yes, if I take a call regarding certain brand, then the consistency and the promise will be delivered. So now is the second step of brands and mission selection. So challenge comes in if you carry that kind of baggage. So you need to be agile.
Hmm.
Second is and second point is very important, that you need to be almost like a tourist, for first couple of months, that where you are like very curious about what is happening in the market. You are just going out there and observing that how are customer interacting, how are they placing the order, whether they
Yes.
are coming in groups, whether they are coming alone. You are sitting in a food court in a mall, and you are seeing that, whether they are going to, let's say, a fried chicken section, or they are going to a healthy section, or they are going to some other section. So that is the second thing which is there, that, we to know your customer really, really well, which is very difficult at the same time, because uh, as someone, you are just entering the market, it takes, can take some time. But again, that's where agility and the approach also comes in. You empower your team. You
Hmm.
empower your team because, some of them would have been here for, a longer time. Some would have been like coming in new. So you empower them, and, and like trust them with the like, give them that kind of confidence that come what may, like we are okay, taking some contrarian bets. That is important. Like take contrarian bets. Like for example, no one would have expected, like in a country like Middle East, Indo-Chinese brand like Mandarin Oak can become one of the biggest brand for us, and one
Yeah.
of the biggest brand in their categories.
Hmm.
So, and it's like, it's a Chinese food. It's like spice, but, and there's no data that will tell you that, you should do Indo-Chinese food spicy way here. But
Hmm.
that's where, the leadership judgment, as well as your years of experience of dealing with different customers, dealing with different scenarios, navigating through different scenarios comes in. That, okay, no problem. That this is the contrarian bet that you want to take.
Hmm.
Align it with the team and let them, then let it be. Let's see, like, how does it go. If it is working, then scale up very fast.
Yeah.
So as I mentioned earlier in the conversation as well, that, a lot of times when you are in a new geography or a new this thing, you have to take calls with imperfect data. It's
Yes.
always, it almost like, ki you have you're driving and you've entered a mountainous kind of area, and now maps is there, but maps is not completely accurate.
Yeah.
You need to take the judgment call that
Yeah.
there's a dead end which is coming, so you cannot, even if the map is saying go straight, you cannot. You will take the judgment call. You will, take the roundabouts, and
Hmm.
maybe, and if you feel that you are landing up in the right area, you keep on like doing it, like you keep on
Yes.
backing yourself. And yeah, so and finally, what I feel is like that is the same formula that we have applied. One thing we have kept same everywhere, that so adaptability, and the curiosity, it will like open different kind of doors. But again, consistency and delivering what you have promised, that's what, builds trust, and that's what, helps in the long run, to, for the business to run over decades. So that is something that is like at a core, that is something that we are following, that at a core we will do this. But at the same time, yeah, 3 4 areas where we have to be like a little different. Like for example, in our campaign as well, we take a different approach altogether, like not the traditional routes, etc. Like for example, right now we are working on a micro series, a spoof of micro series which we have only produced. There's a food brand, no one would expect that, someone, a food brand will make it. Similarly, in one of our health brands, we did a campaign which would have gone like very other way, but we did it at the start of the year, where we opened all our ingredients. We told everything about ingredients, that these are the ingredients that we are using, and these are the benefits which are out of there, and A to Z 100% transparency. A
Hmm.
lot of, a lot of brands I have not seen doing that. At least maybe some are doing it, but doing a campaign about it and then telling people, you can come try us, and this is what you are eating. We
Yeah.
called it Know What You Eat.
Hmm.
So then, if I have to tell in terms of product as well, like I'm talking more about the contrarian bets. Like no, like couple of years back in UAE market, we launched Kurkure momos. No data will tell you that you should not Kurkure momos, because it is like something that is
Yes.
famous from streets of India. But again, I think, so. If I have to summarize it properly, I would say uh, you need to adapt very quickly. You need to understand your customer behavior, that what they are preferring. You need to like empower your team, so that they are like confident enough to take that kind of bold calls. And you need to be like being contrarian in your approach. A lot of places, sometimes, the data might be imperfect, or data might be, will be give just a guiding direction, but you need to take that judgment call based on your experience and the insights from the market, that, let's do it, this can work. Yeah.
So the human and creativity part is like is very critical, even with all these tools coming in.
Yeah, tools is extremely important.
Yeah.
I'll say our ROAS over last 2.5 years have at least, increased by uh, like I will not say the exact numbers, but at least, there has been improved by uh, 25%, like where we were as a ROAS, like our marketing spend versus revenue, where we are right now. In last 2.5 years, we have made a huge difference, and this has happened purely because of adoption of tool. Like earlier, we used to put in money as a whole, as a sum. Ki, let's say you have put 100 rupees ki 100 rupees performance marketing, let's do it.
Yeah.
Now that 100 rupees is broken down into, let's say, time slots in terms of days, in terms of weekday, weekend, in terms of peak and non-peak. That today is Diwali, let's put more money on, let's say, a Bheru's Biryani or a Mandarin Oak visibility. So we have also evolved over time, and foods have definitely played a big role. I'll say
Yeah.
70% is that, but 30%
Yes.
creativity, judgment, and contrarian bets will
Yes.
make that 100% complete. So that's what I feel.
Yes. And also, Menk, talking about the aggregator platforms, it's both an opportunity and a dependence on the food brands. So, how should companies think about balancing aggregator reliance with building direct customer relationships?
So at Rebel, we consider aggregators as our partners only. We have worked for a long period of time together, and it is more like a partnership. So I would say there are different stages to it. So brand is something that Rebel is owning.
Yeah.
The product is something that Rebel is owning, and the product experience, like how you would feel when you receive the brand.
Hmm.
Like for example, when you are receiving a metal Nawabi handi from
Hmm.
Behrus, that is something that we control. That how
Hmm.
can you do that? What
Yes.
aggregators are owning there is that how our brands are visible on their platform, how it is getting delivered. So I would say that there's a partnership and there's always a direct to customer
Hmm.
relationship that we are building, because they are coming on that aggregator to buy from, let's say, a Mandarin Oak or from Fasos.
Huh.
So when we are delivering that order, the product itself, the way the packaging comes to them, what we write to them, like of late we started giving stickers with some of our brands and we got huge organic impressions. Now, while it is getting delivered through aggregators, but we are having that direct relation. Like
Hmm.
people remember, as much as people will remember that I ordered from X platform, they will also remember, and even more so, that what they ordered. So they
Yes.
ordered Fasos, or they
Hmm.
ordered a Honest Bowl or a 500 calorie project or a Mandro. They'll remember that. As a customer, you would also feel that you remember, like what restaurant you are having from, and that rememberability comes from giving that extra personalized touch to everything that you do and staying true to what you are promising. If I'm saying a overload wrap, you should as a customer feel that it's an overload wrap. So that's
Hmm.
the thing. So I feel it's a mix of both, that where we are having that direct association with the customer through our brands, while our partners, which are aggregators, they are delivering it and helping us to fulfill that experience.
And now we'll talk a bit about this AI, robotics, and IoT, which is entering the kitchens. What are the use cases that you have seen, which can be game changer in scaling this food business?
So I feel a lot of American QSR have already cracked it. If you look at it, a lot of their cuisines, they have made it more assembly based. Like something like a Mexican cuisine, which has a uh, worldwide acceptance. So it's an evergreen category. It's mostly an assembly based kind of thing. Similarly, if you look at pizzas, also a lot of automation has come in where the sauce, cheesing, etc. happens like completely through the machines, etc. So I feel it depends from category to category. There are categories which are more like, the dependence is more on the sourcing. That if you source the right raw ingredients, the output will be amazing. And it is more like, you need to assemble the products, like something like a burger, something like that. So there I feel automation can play a huge role, that, the buns can get toasted automatically. There could be a slider where, the buns are getting toasted. The chicken frying can be happening automate, like there are 6-minute automatic fryer which is there. It comes up and then the assembly happens. So it depends from category to category. There are categories like these where automation will play a huge role. In fact, we have tried to automate a lot of other things as well, but that are more skill based things. So I feel there would be still a need for that having that human touch, but at the same time, like something like your paratha, which is getting toasted for 1 minute 30 seconds, 1 minute, like 1.5 minutes it takes to make that paratha. That can get automated eventually in long run, whereas the assembly and the personalized things is happening through the kitchen itself, that you want extra mayo or you want extra spice, so that is still happening through the stove itself. But the automation can help you basically simplifying or reducing the time for simple tasks like baking, like saucing, like cheesing, like assembling. So these things can be automated, and I feel that will increase the throughput by many folds once that
Yes.
that is happening.
Yeah, and since Mank, you have kind of led these marketing efforts, so also want to understand from the loyalty program, perspective, that it has gone very, kind of hyper personalized these days, and consumer engagement in food tech is an ever, kind of evolving thing. So what innovations do you think will define the future of customer retention?
So there are two parts to it. First, I think 80% of the role is played through the actual order itself. So when that customer is receiving that order, how much have you met his or her expectation? That will always play, like, even if you, even decades from now, even if I give someone a free food or something like that, he knows that the loyalty program is extremely lucrative. He or she will still not order, you will not order, but you know that the food is not that great, or the food is not as per my expectation. So first core principle will always remain that, whatever the customer is expecting, you are delivering that on time. That will always remain the key. But yes, but then to have that edge, loyalty program will play a huge role. I've seen a lot of brands which, do a simple loyalty program like, you buy 5 coffees, 6 coffees free. So I feel simplicity is very important in the loyalty program as well. Like, don't make it too complicated. Don't make it like, once you are collecting 1,000 points, it is equivalent to, let's say, 1 rupee or something like that. It should be like very simple to understand. Yeah. It should, and that's how, and that's on that ethos only we are building our loyalty program, and we have built a lot of it so far on that only, that it should be very simple. That, if let's say I have ordered already rupees, let's say it's an hypothetical thing, I have ordered, let's say, worth rupees 2,000, I'll get any item worth 300 rupees free. It's simple for me to understand that if I bought something worth 2,000, if I made 5 6 transactions, the next thing I'll get is for free. So I think it is twofold. One is deliver in the first order itself what you have promised, and people will definitely come back to give that extra edge. Have that loyalty keep it very simple, simple to understand and simple to use. And I feel that's all. Because one thing is for sure, that even at least in foreseeable future, food will never be downloaded, or there's nothing like that. It will always be eaten. It will always be something that will go inside you. Yes, customer pattern may evolve, that maybe you become more health conscious, or let's say Korean takes over, or all these trends will keep on changing. But food will always remain something that you will eat, and you will have that kind of some emotion to it, that I'm eating when you are ordering up. So yeah, we just need to live up to that expectation and respect that emotion.
And now a very interesting topic is around sustainability and health trends. People are becoming now, a lot more calorie conscious, health conscious and all. So how do you see food brands balancing profitability with these evolving consumer expectations?
So to begin with, firstly, I would like to say that, all our brands, all our products on our, like, or I would rather start like this. Like, in Middle East, we are having the brand called the so everything that goes into that brand, right from calories to protein to carbs to fat, every nutrient is transparently mentioned, that these are
Mm.
the things that are going in there. I feel as we evolve and as the lifestyle has become, health will increasingly play a huge role in whatever we are doing. The great thing is that, as I mentioned at the start of our conversation, that we are having that platform which can basically launch, build, and scale, do all the three things from the same kitchen. So, right now, let's say, we are giving a Fasos wrap. Firstly, there can be incremental changes, like, there's already a whole wheat option, there's always already a wheat tortilla option, which is already present in our menu. Then the second layer comes in, where the platform plays a huge role. That the way our kitchens are built, the way our platform is built, it is so modular that, you know our go to market time is like very minimal. Let's say, if in 30 pin codes, if you want to take a certain brand, health brand live, we can take it very fast. And the second advantage that comes is, because we have decoupled the real estate from the brand itself, so we can give that time for the brand to grow. So that is my answer to your second part, which is profitability. Because we are having that kind of platform which has decoupled the real estate from this thing, and the kind of synergies that we have built, which allows us to cross utilize all our resources, whether it is in terms of, like, other roles, in terms of staff, everything. All our resources can be cross utilized. So we have that power that, we can deliver what customer is expecting, which is like high quality, healthy food. And at the same time, we can, take that hit for a short time, because any brand that you launch, it takes us, some runway for it to become popular, for the customer to gain that trust and have, starting to adopt it. So health trend is real. I think in next 5 7 years, it will evolve and it will become like really big. It has already become really big actually, but I think more and more people will start to adopt it. I think since 2020, the shift is quite rapid. So that is, there's no shying away from that. Second is because the platform that we are having, it allows us to put a brand like in, like, I'll say, in max to max, like from conceptualization to going live, we can go live in 45 days with a brand. And even if that brand is doing, let's say, I'd start 20 orders in a day, we are more than happy with it. We'll consider this as like it's a very good start. Whereas if someone else starts it as an individual restaurant owner, for him or her, 20 orders will be like, it will become unsustainable. So which allows us to deliver to our promise. Like even if we are using high quality ingredients and which increases our cost, we are okay with that because we want to first deliver to the customer what they are expecting, and then we will solve for the other parts of margins and everything. That's okay. Like that over time we have seen that as brands evolve, it gets solved on its own.
So thank you so much, Mayank. This was a very insightful discussion. And again,
Yeah.
from the entire Dawdle team, we're extremely grateful that you took out time. Hope this is going to help a lot of global leaders from the F&B segment from across the globe to whom we'll be sharing this podcast. Thank you again, Mayank, for joining us.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Nishi.